I spot my father's Aspen vacation home from a quarter-mile away, its stone facade gleaming in the late afternoon sun like some monument to success I'll never achieve. The gift box in my hands suddenly feels too small, too insignificant for a man who owns 3 homes and a yacht. My fingers tighten around the carefully wrapped present, a vintage compass from the year he was born. Something meaningful I spent months tracking down. The driveway curves past manicured evergreens toward a valet stand, where a young man in a crisp white shirt takes the keys to my sensible sedan with barely concealed judgment. All around me, luxury cars worth more than my annual income sit like sleeping beasts in the Colorado sunshine. Just breathe, I whisper to myself, smoothing down the front of my dress, the most expensive one I own, which isn't saying much. Music and laughter drift from the back patio where waitstaff in black and white weave through guests in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I follow the signs to a reception table where place cards await each guest. The woman managing the table smiles at me with practiced hospitality. "Name?" she asks, pen poised above a guest list. "Emma Reid." Her smile falters just slightly. "Of course, Miss Reid. Your card is right here." I reach for the elegant cream place card and freeze, while others around it read, "Gregory Williams, business partner," or "Senator Robert Jenkins, friend." Mine reads, "Emma Reid, the Embarrassment." A cold sensation spreads through my chest, like ice water replacing my blood. I blink, certain I've misread. But there it is, in elegant black calligraphy, "The Embarrassment." Across the room, Catherine and Chloe stand by the bar, champagne flutes in hand. They're watching me, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and amusement. Chloe whispers something to my stepmother, and they both suppress smiles before turning away. "This isn't a mistake. This is deliberate. 2 weeks ago," Catherine called, her voice dripping with that false sweetness she reserves for public performances, or when my father might overhear. "Emma, darling, you absolutely must come to your father's birthday. 61 isn't typically a milestone, but Richard insists on gathering everyone close to him. Families should be together for these occasions." I'd hesitated, remembering the last family gathering where I'd been seated at the kids' table despite being 29 years old, where Jake's medical school acceptance had been toasted 3 separate times while my business landing a major client went unmentioned. "I'm not sure I can get away," I'd told her. "The business is really taking off and—" "Emma," she'd interrupted, "your father would be so disappointed if you weren't there. Surely your little website design thing can survive without you for a weekend." So I'd rearranged client meetings, asked Lisa to cover 3 important calls, spent hours hunting down the perfect gift, one that showed thoughtfulness rather than expense, something my father might actually appreciate. I'd let myself hope, just a little, that this time would be different. That perhaps my growing business success might finally register with my father. That after years of striving, I might at last be seen. What a fool I was. I placed the name tag back on the table without picking it up. My hands, I notice with distant surprise, have stopped trembling. The initial shock gives way to something colder, more resolute. Catherine approaches, her expression arranged into concern. "Oh, you found your place card." Chloe must have mixed them up when she was helping arrange things. How silly. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. How silly indeed, I reply, my voice steadier than I expected. A waiter passes with a tray of champagne. I take a glass, my expression carefully blank as I raise it in the smallest of toasts. "To family." Catherine's smile tightens. "Yes, to family. Your father will be so pleased you made it." Across the room, my father greets Senator Jenkins with a hearty laugh and backslapping embrace. He welcomes the Andersons with kisses on cheeks. He clasps hands warmly with his golf buddies. When his gaze finally lands on me, he offers a brief nod before turning back to his conversation. Near the fireplace, Jake introduces his medical school friends to a group of my father's associates. "Harvard Medical." One gray-haired man says with approval, "Your father must be very proud." "He is," Jake agrees, basking in the praise. "Paid for every cent of it, too." Meanwhile, no one asks about my business, despite the fact that I now employ 7 people and just signed our biggest client to date. I take a sip of champagne and watch my family from a distance, seeing clearly for the first time. I've spent years chasing validation I'm never going to receive. I've been running a race where the finish line keeps moving, playing a game where the rules change whenever I start to win, and I'm suddenly very, very tired of playing. I linger near the buffet table, mechanically filling a small plate I have no intention of eating from. The hum of conversation flows around me like water around a stone. My father stands across the room, surrounded by admirers as usual, his baritone laugh carrying over the crowd. Harvard Medical is no joke, says a gray-haired man in an expensive suit, clapping Jake on the shoulder. Your father must be incredibly proud. He absolutely is, Jake replies, his smile wide and practiced. Says it's the best investment he ever made. My father raises his glass. Every penny of that trust fund went to good use. Jake will be a surgeon in 2 years. The shrimp I'm holding slips from my fingers back onto the serving tray. Trust fund. My mother's trust fund. The small college account she established before cancer took her $45,000 that was supposed to be for my education. My heart pounds against my ribs so hard I worry others might see it. The room suddenly feels too bright, too loud. I set down my plate and make my way toward my father's study, where I know he retreats during lulls in his parties. I need answers, not an audience. 20 minutes later, the study door opens, and my father walks in, startled to find me seated in one of the guest chairs. Emma, he says, loosening his tie. What are you doing in here? He settles into his leather chair behind the desk, a massive oak piece that once belonged to my grandfather. Behind him, family photos line the shelves. Chloe's graduation, Jake's white coat ceremony. None of me. Was that my mother's money you just bragged about spending on Jake? My voice sounds calmer than I feel. His expression shifts from surprise to annoyance. You're bringing this up now? At my birthday party? You brought it up, I say. I overheard you telling everyone about Jake's trust fund. He sighs heavily, the sound of a man inconvenienced rather than confronted. That money went where it was needed. Jake got into Harvard Medical. What was I supposed to do? Tell him no. That money was for my college. Mom left it specifically for me. He waves his hand dismissively. You were never college material, Emma. You barely finished high school. I had a 3.8 GPA. In public school. And then what? Community college online while you worked at that boutique? He straightens papers on his desk that don't need straightening. Jake needed proper training. He's becoming a surgeon. For God's sake. The door opens before I can respond. Catherine glides in, her expression perfectly arranged into concern. There you are, she says. Richard, the Harrisons are asking for you. She turns to me. Emma, darling, this isn't the time for one of your conversations. People are noticing your absence. Catherine, Dad gave my college fund to Jake. Her eyebrows lift slightly. Oh, Emma, not this again. You're always so dramatic about money. The door opens wider as Jake appears, champagne glass in hand. Dad, Senator Jenkins wants. He stops, registering the tension in the room. What's going on? Your sister seems upset about your medical school funding, my father says, his tone suggesting I'm being unreasonable. Jake at least has the decency to look uncomfortable. You knew? About the money? He nods slowly. Dad told me it was from Mom's family, that it was always intended for whoever went to medical school. A laugh escapes me, sharp and bitter. Mom was a librarian. No one in her family ever went to medical school. Emma, my father interrupts, standing now. This is ancient history. Jake needed that money more than you did. You were always going to end up doing something creative. The way he says creative like it's a consolation prize for people who can't achieve anything meaningful makes something inside me crack. I've spent years trying to earn their approval, restructuring my entire life around proving my worth to them. And for what? My successful business means nothing to them. The clients I've landed, the team I've built from nothing, all dismissed because it wasn't the path my father chose for me. You never intended to support me, did you? My voice has dropped to almost a whisper. All those years I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, you might finally be proud, but you decided who was worth investing in long ago. Catherine sighs dramatically. You're making a scene as usual. Am I? I look around the study. There's no audience here, Catherine. Just family. Isn't that what you said when you invited me? That family should be together? Through the partially open door, I notice several guests in the hallway, their expressions uncomfortable as they overhear our conversation. One woman touches her companion's arm and whispers something, glancing my way with what looks suspiciously like sympathy. My father notices too. His jaw tightens as he moves toward the door. We'll discuss this another time. As I stand there in my father's study, surrounded by family photos that excluded me. I wonder if I should walk away quietly to preserve the peace, or finally speak my truth to the entire gathering. Would keeping silent protect what little relationship we had, or would it just enable more years of the same treatment? One thing is certain: I can't continue pretending. The price of their acceptance is too high, and I've been paying it my entire life. Catherine beckons the photographer with a perfectly manicured finger, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the late afternoon Sunday. "Family photos," she announces, her voice carrying across the patio. "Everyone gather by the fountain." I watch as my father's guests part like the Red Sea, creating a path for the real family to assemble in front of the elaborate stone fountain that dominates the back garden. My father stands center, naturally, with Catherine at his side. Jake and Chloe flank them, leaving me to be positioned at the far edge by Catherine's firm hand on my shoulder. Emma dear, just a bit more to the left. She adjusts me like furniture, pushing me farther from the family nucleus. We want to make sure everyone fits properly. Several guests whisper behind cocktail napkins, their glances flickering between me and the family tableau. I recognize pity in their eyes, somehow worse than the hostility radiating from Catherine. My father raises his glass, commanding attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with me today." His voice booms with practiced authority. Nothing means more than having my perfect family surrounding me on this special day. Perfect family. The words settle like stones in my stomach as I stand isolated, technically in the frame but visibly separate. The photographer snaps several photos before Chloe sidles up beside me, champagne flute dangling between her fingers. "How's that little website business of yours going, Em?" "Still, making those. What do you call them? Templates?" "We're a full-service UX design firm," I correct her, knowing she understands perfectly well. "Just signed Meridian Tech last month." "Oh, that's sweet." She pats my arm. "My agency just landed the national campaign for luxury motors. 7 figures. She leans closer, her expensive perfume cloying. "But we all have to start somewhere, right?" I want to tell her that my little business employs 7 people who respect me, that we're profitable after just 3 years. Instead, I take another sip of champagne and remember how far I've come. What these people don't see when they look at me is the 20-year-old who worked retail at the mall, folding sweaters until midnight before returning to her studio apartment to attend online community college classes. They don't know about the nights I ate ramen 3 meals straight so I could afford the design software for my first freelance projects. They never saw me sitting alone in my apartment on Christmas Eve, working through the night to meet a deadline, while my father and his perfect family gathered around a 10-foot tree in this very house. They weren't there when I landed my first major client, celebrating with a bottle of cheap wine alone because the family gathering that weekend was just for immediate family. There were no family loans, no connections leveraged, no safety net, just determination and talent that refused to be buried. When my website platform went live, I spent the entire day refreshing the page, watching the visitor count tick upward, one by one. Each number represented validation that didn't come with conditions or comparisons. An elderly man in a well-worn but impeccably tailored suit approaches, his gait slow but purposeful. I recognize him vaguely as one of my father's longtime business associates. "Miss Reid?" His voice carries the slight tremor of age but remains clear. "I wanted to tell you that my grandson uses your design platform for his small business. Says it's revolutionary for entrepreneurs without technical expertise." His eyes crinkle with genuine warmth. "You've built something remarkable on your own." The unexpected recognition sends a wave of warmth through me, momentarily displacing the ice that's been building in my chest all evening. Later, I stand alone on the terrace, watching the celebration continue through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The party has moved indoors as the evening air cooled, but I prefer the sharp bite of mountain air to the suffocating atmosphere within. Catherine's heels click on the stone terrace as she approaches. "You should try harder to fit in, Emma." Her voice carries the familiar note of forced maternal concern. "Your attitude is what keeps you on the outside." I turn slowly, meeting her gaze directly. "I've spent my life trying to fit where I was never wanted." "That's simply not true." She frowns, the expression creating small wrinkles her Botox can't quite erase. "My father has always tolerated me," I interrupt, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. For the first time, I straighten my shoulders fully and look directly at Catherine without the instinctive deferential tilt of my head. I don't need to earn a place in my own family, and I'm done trying. My phone buzzes in my clutch. I check it while Catherine struggles to formulate a response. Lisa, how's the party from hell? Remember, you've built something they can't diminish. Call me if you need extraction. The text brings a rush of memories, Lisa helping me through all-nighters to launch our first major project, bringing coffee and encouragement when I doubted myself. Lisa cheering when we landed our first 5-figure contract. Lisa understanding exactly what these family gatherings cost me emotionally. I've built connections with people who value me not for where I fit in a family photo, but for who I am and what I've created. I slip my phone back into my clutch and walk toward the bar, selecting a fresh champagne flute. The caterers are wheeling out the elaborate birthday cake, my father standing nearby ready for his moment. I catch the eye of the party photographer and give him a slight nod, which he returns with professional discretion. With deliberate steps, I walk toward the center of the room, glass in hand. As my father reaches for the cake knife, I tap my glass gently with a spoon, the crystal chime cutting through the chatter. All eyes turn to me. I stand at the center of my father's birthday gathering, champagne glass held steady in my hand. The chatter dies as I tap it gently with a silver spoon. Faces turn toward me, curious, expectant, some wary. The crystal chandelier casts a warm glow over the assembled guests, their jewelry sparkling like stars against designer fabrics. My father's Colorado mansion stretches around us, a monument to success built on the backs of others, including me. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my father's 61st birthday. I begin, my voice clear and unwavering. The words emerge with a confidence I've spent years cultivating in boardrooms and client meetings. Family means support and love. That's what my father always said when I was growing up. I meet the gaze of the elderly businessman who recognized my work earlier, then shift to the senator's wife, then to my father's golf partner. Each connection strengthens my resolve. The room grows completely silent. Even the waitstaff pause, trays balanced carefully as they sense the weight of the moment. Catherine steps forward, her peach silk dress rustling. Emma, this isn't the time for one of your dramatic moments. Her practiced smile barely conceals her panic. Several guests shift uncomfortably. A woman in a beaded gown whispers something to her husband. The senator's wife frowns slightly, looking between Catherine and me with new awareness. Let's cut the cake, Dad. Jake calls from near the dessert table, clapping his hands together like a camp counselor trying to redirect restless children. I think everyone's ready for something sweet. His interruption falls flat. If anything, it only underscores what I'm doing, speaking honestly, while my family scrambles to maintain their carefully constructed image. The contrast couldn't be clearer. You know, says an older gentleman I don't recognize, I'd like to hear what Emma has to say. Several heads nod in agreement. For the first time, I see what others must see, a young woman being silenced by her own family at what should be a moment of celebration. The years of similar dismissals, the countless times my voice was deemed less important, suddenly visible to everyone present. My phone buzzes in my clutch. I don't need to look to know it's Lisa, sending encouragement from across town. Whatever you decide, I'm here. She'd texted earlier when I told her I might finally speak my truth tonight. The elderly guest who recognized my design work earlier catches my eye, giving me a subtle nod. He understands what this cost me. Near the grand fireplace, the party photographer repositions himself, angling his camera toward me. He senses a moment worth capturing, though he can't know its significance. These small gestures of support, amid the swirling tension, strengthen my spine. I am not entirely alone here, though my family would have me believe so. As I stood before my father's friends and colleagues, I wondered if complete honesty would bring closure or just more pain. Should I expose the years of neglect, or simply walk away with my dignity intact? My father's confident smile begins to falter as I continue speaking calmly. The mask he's worn for decades, benevolent patriarch, successful businessman, pillar of the community, slips just enough for me to glimpse the uncertainty beneath. Across the room, Chloe shifts her weight from one designer heel to another, suddenly fascinated by the contents of her champagne glass. She won't meet the eyes of the guests around her, sensing perhaps that the tide of public opinion might be turning. I take a deep breath, filling my lungs completely before exhaling. The moment stretches, elastic with possibility. What comes next will change everything for me, for my father, for this fragile construct we've called family. When I was 18, I begin, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. My mother left something for me, something my father promised to protect. The words hang in the air between us, the beginning of a truth too long buried. I look directly at my father now, watching as he realizes what's coming next. I stand at the center of my father's birthday celebration, champagne glass in hand, aware of every eye in the room upon me. The crystal feels cool against my palm as conversations die into a weighted silence. For once in my life, I have everyone's attention, including my father's. Emma, always with the flair for the dramatic. My father's laugh slices through the quiet, forced and hollow. Let's move on to the cake, shall we? His fingers grip his wine glass so tightly I wonder if the stem might snap. I've never seen him this way before. Richard Reid, successful businessman, always in control, now clutching his drink like a lifeline. The power shift is subtle but unmistakable. Catherine glides toward me, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Family disagreements should stay private, dear, she says, voice honeyed with artificial concern. Perhaps we could discuss this later? The suggestion hangs in the air, an escape route offered with the expectation I'll take it, just as I always have. Behind her, Jake steps forward, his Harvard Medical School pin gleaming on his lapel. Emma has always been jealous, he announces loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, of what Chloe and I have accomplished. Some people just can't handle others' success. A few months ago, his words would have cut deep. Today, they merely confirm what I already know. You're right about one thing, Jake. I say, my voice steadier than I expected. This is about success and jealousy, but not in the way you think. I turn to address the room, making eye contact with several of my father's business associates. At 18, I discovered my college fund, my mother's final gift before she died, had been emptied to pay for Jake's education. A soft murmur ripples through the gathering. My father takes a half step forward, then stops as I continue. Dad mentioned earlier how proud he is to have paid for every cent of Jake's medical school. I gesture toward my stepbrother. What he didn't mention was whose money funded that education. The color drains from my father's face as several guests shift uncomfortably. A woman in pearls whispers something to her husband, who frowns at my father. Do you remember waiting for me after school, Dad? You wouldn't, because Catherine always said you were too busy. I sat on the bench outside until the janitor felt sorry enough to drive me home. My voice doesn't waver. Remember all those family ski trips to Vail? The cruises to the Bahamas? The summers in Martha's Vineyard? I wasn't there for those either. There was never room for me at the vacation house, never money for my ticket. I watch recognition flicker in the eyes of guests who've known our family for years. They're mentally cataloging family photos where I was absent, events where I was never mentioned. Despite starting with nothing, I built a business that now employs 7 people and just signed Westfield Media as a client. I smile slightly at the surprised looks on several faces. That's right, the same Westfield Media that turned down Chloe's marketing firm last quarter. Chloe's sharp intake of breath is audible in the silence. She hadn't known I was aware of her failed pitch. I didn't fail this family, I say, looking directly at my father. This family failed me. The party room falls completely silent. Not even the clink of glasses or whispered comments break the stillness. My father stands frozen by the cake table, the knife still in his hand, unable to form a response. For the first time in my life, I've rendered Richard Reid speechless. I raise my glass, the champagne catching the light from the crystal chandeliers overhead, to finding family in those who truly support you, not just those who share your name. A few guests hesitantly raise their glasses, looking between me and my father, uncertain which allegiance to honor. Catherine steps toward me, her perfect smile brittle at the edges, but stops when I calmly shake my head. The power in the room has shifted. I notice several business associates exchanging glances, some looking at my father with new perspective. A distinguished older man nods slightly in my direction, approval evident in his eyes. This is the last time any of you will see me. I say, my voice carrying easily through the silence, Happy birthday, Dad. I set my champagne flute down on a nearby table, still full and untouched. No one moves to stop me as I walk unhurriedly toward the exit, my heels echoing against the marble floor. The vintage compass gift remains in my purse, never presented. The valet brings my car without comment, though I catch something like respect in his eyes as he hands me the keys. I slide into the driver's seat, exhaling fully for what feels like the first time in hours. After I start the engine, my phone begins lighting up with notifications. One after another, text messages flood my screen. Catherine's appears first. You've gone too far this time. Then Jake's, Chloe's. And finally one from a number I haven't seen in months. One of my father's business partners asking for my contact information. No message from my father. I place the phone face down on the passenger seat. I drive down the winding road away from the vacation home. I watch it grow smaller in my rearview mirror. The stone facade no longer looks impressive, just cold and unwelcoming, like the family it houses. I wonder if my father will finally acknowledge the truth, or if this will become another family story revised and rewritten until I'm once again cast as the villain. Either way, I'm no longer waiting for an apology that will never come. The mountain road curves ahead, and the house disappears entirely from view. The morning sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our expanded downtown office as I stand before my team of 12, 5 more than we had 6 months ago. They watch attentively while I walk them through our latest project proposal for Meridian Hotels, a client who sought us out specifically for what they called our refreshing integrity in the design space. Remember, this isn't just about aesthetic appeal, I tell them, gesturing to the mock-ups displayed on the wall-mounted screen. Meridian wants functionality that speaks to both their longtime customers and younger travelers. Let's give them both. Maya, our newest hire, raises her hand. What if we incorporated some of that analog-digital blend we discussed in yesterday's brainstorm? Something nostalgic but modern? 6 months ago, I might have hesitated, second-guessing the boldness of such a suggestion. Today, I simply nod. Mock it up by Thursday. If it works, we'll include it in the presentation. When Lisa catches my eye from across the room, her smile tells me what we both know. The woman leading this meeting bears little resemblance to the one who once trembled at a family gathering, desperate for validation that never came. Back in my office after lunch, I find an envelope on my desk. Heavy cream stationery, gold embossing Catherine's signature touch. Inside lies an invitation to the annual Aspen Valley Children's Hospital fundraiser. My father serves on the board, a fact mentioned prominently in the second paragraph. I run my finger along the edge of the card, waiting for the familiar anxiety to rise, the tightness in my chest, the mental inventory of suitable outfits. The rehearsal of conversations designed to make me appear successful enough to be worthy of the Reid name. Nothing comes. Instead, I check my calendar for the date. I already have plans dinner with our development team to celebrate the launch of our new platform. I drop the invitation into my recycling bin without a second thought. I no longer measure my worth by his standards, I say aloud to my empty office, surprising myself with how true those words feel. Friday evening finds us at Emilio's, the corner Italian place with red checkered tablecloths and wine served in tumblers. Lisa raises her glass as our small gathering of friends and colleagues leans in. To Reid Design, she says, and to Emma, who taught us all that the strongest foundations are built by people who understand both beauty and resilience. To building connections that lift us up instead of tearing us down, I add, feeling the warmth of genuine celebration wash over me. Later that month, I meet with Jessie, a young designer who left her previous firm after her ideas were repeatedly credited to male colleagues. As she describes her experience, I recognize the familiar pattern of doubt creeping into her voice, wondering if she was overreacting, if she should have tried harder to fit in. Your talent deserves respect, I tell her, sliding our contract across the table. And you'll find it here. That evening, I finalize the paperwork for our new building purchase 3 times the space of our current office, and submit the application for the Elaine Reid Scholarship for Women in Design, named for the mother I barely remember but whose creative spirit somehow survived in me. Before shutting down my computer, I place an old photograph of myself at 7 gap-toothed and holding a hand-drawn picture of our house beside the Business Leadership Award our Chamber of Commerce presented me last week. As I placed my mother's photo beside the life I'd built without my father's support, I wondered if true family is something we're born into or something we create through our choices. Would you choose the comfort of blood ties that bind too tightly, or the freedom of connections based on genuine respect?